Go Chiefs. How about that one? How about that? That'll be a fun. Looking forward to that. So, good morning, everybody. Glad to see your shiny faces here today. I have to say, because I'm still. Somebody told me that it takes time to get a grip on this job, and this job is 2 years. I'm 2 years in now, so I'm feeling comfortable, and I'm feeling like I know most of you, and I count you as friends, and I mean that sincerely. That's one thing that was a pleasant surprise for me in coming to Greene County. Just getting started here, John, with some small talk. So
let me catch my breath.
Yeah, join on in. John and I do take the stairs. That's not just here, but at the other building. Yeah. He takes them two at a time, and I can't do that. But I can make it to the top and then catch my breath. There's a defibrillator up there. So anyway, it works. Have you got a list of things that we were?
I just kind of jotted some notes and thought maybe that would prompt some discussion. So
yeah, that sounds good. I was just telling them that one of the things that appealed to me about this job that was not expected is the family feel of this group, and I mean that sincerely, and we feel that in our office too. It's a strange position to be in. I think some people look like, oh, it's the commissioners and then everybody else, and that's really not how we feel. We feel like we're all together in this thing. So my wife had asked me if there's anything stressful going on now that budget's done. And I said, honestly, this ARPA funding is a little more stressful than I anticipated. It's almost like Christmas time, and we get to pass out gifts, but not everybody's going to get one. And they're all looking for that boost, but we can't do that for everybody. So that one was a little tougher than we expected. Honestly, it was for me anyway.
Yeah.
We're working through it, and there's some good folks that maybe won't get anything, and there's some others that will, and we're just trying to do the best that we can to help the most. And really, we see this as an investment into our community in a lot of ways. We've done a lot for mental health care, especially with teens, and that's a big deal for us. Oh, there you go. Yeah. If we can catch that while they're young and they're not entrenched in maybe some difficult things in their life, we can give them some hope and help them to get out of that. So I can tell you, and while I'm starting on that, and then we'll let John jump in on this, one of the first things that, and this was interesting, really, when we were first, the CIP funds, the big improvement project funds, capital improvement projects or community improvement projects, Chris polled each of us separately. We had a list of applicants of what they wanted, and each of us rated number one the Borough Crisis Center for Teenagers. That was important to us, and it was, I guess, not a surprise because I know the other two so well. It wasn't anything that we had talked about necessarily, but it rose to the top. I know that Borough will be having a groundbreaking. We're hoping in March to start this Borough Crisis Center for teenagers. There will be some rooms for overnight stays, 24-day stays, people that need a little extra help, because of, as we have found, we're having to find, if there's a person in crisis here right now, a teenager, they have to go to Cox North, and really we have to look in a 4 or 5 state region to try to find a bed for them if that's the level of care that they need. So we're going to make a dent in that here, and we have some other things that we're working on that I can't really announce right now, but we think there's some other ways that we can generate some hope with that, and really good things are going to come from that place. So we're excited. That was our first ARPA funding that we kind of all agreed on and said, okay, this one is we're doing this. So anyway, it was that was 5.2, wasn't it?
I think you're
right. Just over $5 million. So that's exciting, and we're getting an opportunity to work with them and have some influence. So for those of you that are curious about those things, that was our first choice, and we've hit consistently on mental health care along the way. So anyway, just a side note.
It's an area that I've heard from a lot of parents. They've not been able to find somewhere to take a child that is going through a crisis for whatever reason. And I mean, they've searched statewide, and they're just really left desperate. And that has to be just a terrible feeling. So this is going to really fill that need here in Greene County, and be the first in the state, I believe, to fill that need in this exact way.
Yeah, it will be, especially if the other part of this comes together that's being worked on, and it would be something that would be unique to the nation for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, working on those things, that's kind of been our passion and our struggle. Quite honestly, it's just a challenge. we need to do that. We need to help, and that's what we're trying to do with all of the other ARPA directions. John and I haven't had a chance to discuss who's going to talk about what, but you want to jump in next and bring something up, and then I'll join in.
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned Bob. Apologize, he can't make it this morning, but certainly we'll be here next time. I think we're gonna do these quarterly. Is that right, Cindy? Maybe.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I thought we'd just bring up a few topics, and then if you all want to interject in the middle, feel free to, because I prefer this to be more of a discussion if we can. But obviously, we just wrapped up the budget in January, and thanks to Jeff and Mike and Tina for their tremendous work as always. It was just such a great process this year, and thanks to all of you for helping make that such a great process. Obviously, the budget's about priorities for you and your teams, and then us, and I feel like we were able to really identify those priorities early on and move forward. Obviously, a very top priority for all of us in this room are taking care of our team members. Is becoming such an important issue throughout the nation, but especially here in Greene County. And I think we were able to make some strides to do that after listening to the feedback from all of you. Again, a COLA increase this year on top of what we were able to do last year. And again, that was listening to you all. That was one of the top priorities that we heard from every single department head and office holder. And just a couple of things I'll remind you about. If your employees aren't taking advantage of them, I would recommend you look at them. The employee referral program, I know we're seeing some high usage of that by certain departments. So just to remind you, it's a $500 referral fee if one of your employees refers an employee that gets hired, and that's paid out over, I think, a 6-month period. There's a few departments that are using that pretty heavily, and they don't have to be hired in your department. So they could be hired somewhere else in the county. So I'd keep that in mind. Also, the tuition reimbursement program, we're starting to see a lot of activity with that. And that's a win-win. That's a win for the team members as they're furthering their education. And then a win for Greene County as the employees are learning something about their job to further their expertise. So just a reminder there.
John, before you move on from that on the budget, I know we did 7.5% COLA the year before last. Last year was 5%. One of the things that we're looking at, we understand that with CARES funding, ARPA funding, with the money that each person got, excuse me, individually to get through the COVID, we have, with our ARPA funding, the schools, the city, the other municipalities, nearly $200 million in ARPA funds. You lump everything else into there, it's over half. It's been projected that it's over $500 million is being pumped into our economy. The ARPA funds will be all spent. It's required that they will be spent by the end of 2026. Now, knowing that, if you do the math, there's $50 to $70 million a year, probably closer to 70 million a year, being artificially pumped into our local economy over a period of 7 years. When that dries up, we know that our budget is fueled by the sales tax. When that money dries up, what replaces that, and how can we be prepared to weather what might be a coming storm? We also know, because of the bonds that we've taken out and the projects that we're doing here, by 2032, we're in a much better position bond-wise, and our expenses really drop way off from the bond issues. So we've got about a 6-year period, a 6-year window that is concerning, to be honest. So as we move forward, we hope that we can continue to do something nice with the COLA that's outpacing inflation, but we're also aware that we don't ever want to get in a position that we've overspent ourselves, and when we hit this potential tight spot, that we're in a bad position. Now, Jeff pointed out one way to measure, and it excludes this artificial inflation of our resource, of our money coming in. One way to look at that is, are we having job growth in the area? Is the workforce growing in our community? If the workforce grows, then we are somewhat insulated from a recession. I came from the housing business, and I know in 07, 08, when things crashed, nationally, it was called the lost decade of housing. It was a horrific crash. Texas never felt it. Part of the reason Texas never felt it is because they continued to grow. Their workforce grew, their economic development was growing. They never felt that crash because of the growth. So if we can continue to bring good businesses, good jobs to our community, we can soften what might be a 6-year tough period. I know Buc-ee's came to town, and their projections are that their sales will be 30 million a year excluding gas, and that it will be new money coming to our area. People will stop at Buc-ee's more so than people would leave the town to drive out to the outskirts to buy gas or buy something at Buc-ee's. I know when I go to see my son in Texas, we always stop at a Buc-ee's, and I never would have stopped in those towns except I want to stop at Buc-ee's. So maybe that's the case. So if we can continue to grow our economy, not artificially through federal funds coming our direction that are going to dry up, but if we can continue to grow our economy, it gives us a better opportunity with our budget. But we are very aware that there is a tight spot coming up for us. So we need to be careful of that. And I just say that because our heart is that we would love to continue to get healthy COLAs. And maybe we can if things fall into place the way that they should. That's our hope. But we're also very cautious knowing what's coming, and it's our job to be that way. So you might be seeing those things in your office as well and start thinking in those terms that we've got an opportunity coming or a place coming up on the schedule that we need to be careful and cautious about. So let's go back.
Any comments or questions on budget related items? Well, obviously, Rusty talked about growing the area. One of the big things that the county government can do in that regard is focusing on our infrastructure, which our highway department just does an amazing job at. Rusty and I both serve on the OTO board and certainly enjoy representing the county on that board. One of the big projects for the county right now, the biggest project in a long time, is obviously the Kansas extension. And Adam reported to us yesterday that that's about 43% build. So I guess it's a little bit, probably closer to half done, I would say. And you might drive by there if you haven't. It's really starting to take shape, and you can tell what it's going to look like. There are going to be some road closures around that at Weaver and 145 for about a 6 to 8 week period. So you might hear about that in your office. I think they're going to be doing some grading and some other improvements to that intersection. Another big transportation project that we have both been working on through OTO is the I-44 13 interchange. I think we may have mentioned that in this room before, but as you all know, the traffic patterns have changed and have really started to make that intersection back up at, honestly, unusual times. The diverging diamond was the first in the nation and worked really well when it was put in, but based on those traffic pattern changes, it no longer works and needs to be changed. Through OTO, we commissioned a study late last year to see what was going on there, and that's where we learned that the traffic patterns have changed. And then also we took it a step further to see what could be done and how much it would cost. Representative Bill Owen is carrying the bill in the House and is really advocating for this first stage to be done. The county is going to contribute $1 million. Many times MoDOT likes to see that partnership, so the county has offered $1 million. The city of Springfield has offered $2 million, and we're very hopeful to see that first stage completed, put higher on the STIP later on this year, with construction starting fairly soon after that. That would also widen several lanes of I-44 throughout that corridor. So we're advocating for this in the legislature, and honestly starting to get quite a bit of traction. The governor dedicated several $100 million to I-70, which that has honestly helped Representative Owen's case to put just a little bit towards I-44. So that is a project that the entire OTO board has come behind to try to improve this transportation infrastructure in our area.
Yeah, and John and I are both aware that anytime we can get those funds in our community, build roads and bridges and transportation improvement, are additional funds coming to our community that otherwise wouldn't. So we fight pretty hard to try to bring those projects to our area, and we're not ashamed to push and pull and tug and scrap for what we can get.
And we've been in Jeff City a couple times, Bob, a time more than we have, to really try to advocate for this and other issues. So I know many of you are at the Capitol quite often, or sometimes this year as well. But if there's any issue that we can bring up with the legislator, let us know. We always have a great delegation here that's very receptive to the local issues that we experience here in Greene County. We've talked about relationships. We also attend the quarterly mayor's meeting in Greene County. The last one was 2 weeks ago, I think, a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Where was this one? It wasn't in Stratford.
It was in Willard.
Willard, that's right. It's a time, it's not our meeting, but the mayor's organize quarterly just to discuss issues that are going on within their municipality. Several of you attend that as well. They invite us as guests just to hear what's going on and offer county perspective. So really continue to strengthen those municipal relationships. One of the boards that the county is involved in is the park board. We have made it a point to put very strong members on the park board to start to make some changes to that board. And I think they're making some very positive influence there. That's a board that Jeff probably wouldn't like this, but there's really been no reserve fund in the past, and things would pop up and they just couldn't afford to fix it. So they now have a reserve fund and are starting to set money aside and hopefully strengthen the park board and therefore strengthen the community going forward. So that's an area that we can touch just by our appointments to those boards, and look forward to doing that going forward.
Yeah.
And I missed it because I was out of town, but I think you all had a chance to sit down with the park board and have a really good dialogue on the future of what the board looks like.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And we put business-minded folks on it. And sometimes there's a little pushback from that. If you have folks that just kind of rubber stamp things, that feels good as a director to have that, but it also is nice to be challenged. And we try to put folks on, not that are contentious, but challenge things. I think it's best for everybody to ask the challenging questions, to hash it out. Everybody learns, and then we make better decisions. And I know we challenge one another in our office with difficult questions that really we have to address. So not afraid to do that. You know, John, one other thing we might mention, because I think the rumors have been going around, there is discussion that how can we, and this is a big how can we, and we've got a lot of other things that are in front of this, but can we put together a child care facility on this campus? There are other things in front, the reworking this business and getting the former jail in line, a lot of things that have to fall into place. But on the horizon, and it's time to start talking and looking at now, can we put a child care facility on this campus that we could help? And what I mean by that is we would have opportunities for people to get childcare that otherwise have a very difficult finding it, but maybe more importantly is that we could help subsidize that. So if we run the business, and we don't know that we want to run the business, but maybe we're just the building owner, there's a lot of questions to be asked about that, but we're beginning to do some very serious research on that. And it's not something that we just threw out there as a sidebar, hey, this would be neat. It's something that we work on and talk about regularly. How can we do this? Where do we put it? How does this work? If you know folks, and if you've got some input on that, we'd be happy to hear your suggestions on what's the best way to make this happen. So it's a goal of ours, and we want to get there.
No, and the survey really showed us what the interest level is with Greene County employees. So we did put together a small working group, for lack of a better term, that was just put together last week or in the last couple of weeks. From our office, Chris Coulter's going to be on that group. So certainly reach out to us. But if you want to talk to Chris, he's going to be representing the commission office, and he's not here this morning, so I can toss his name out. But some from the sheriff's office are on there. You all may have someone on there. Okay, you're on there. If anyone else is interested in serving on that, feel free to reach out to Chris, because it's really just a working group to discuss what's feasible and what's needed, and look at other areas who've done something similar. So something we're continuing to investigate going forward. Campus security is a big topic that's come up in this room many times, and you all are probably aware, but we did fund a campus security officer for this campus in the last budget. I was going to try to reach out to the sheriff this morning to see if he had any timetable for that, but I did not get a chance to do that. I don't have, Cindy, have you heard anything on timeframe?
We are seeing a much more frequent attendance.
Oh, good.
First of the year.
Okay, great.
Good.
Terrific. But just want to make sure everyone is in the loop. That position was funded, so should be someone over here almost all of the time. With it being one position, there could be some gaps, but obviously much more frequent than they are now. So certainly heard what you were saying on that, and hopefully address that.
Well, and that position has been advertised and promoted, and they're trying to find the right person. So as you know, hiring is challenging right now. And in fact, the sheriff has said to help with the hiring, they're actually proactively reaching out to their recent retirees, and recent within the last 3 or 4 years, asking if they would like to work a day or 2 days or something along those lines. So we may have a different face every day out there, but we hope to have somebody out there when these doors are open.
Retirements. Obviously, Rick Artman has left the county after I think it was nearly 20 years of service, so he's certainly going to be missed. But you all have probably heard, but we have named Adam Humphreys the interim director. So he's already hit the ground running and doing a great job with that position, and will continue to provide tremendous leadership to what's already a tremendous department here at the county.
And he put together a very good and funny video for Rick's retirement that tells me that Adam has a better sense of humor than I first thought.
He
And
came out of a shell.
yeah, he did. He may pick up on right where Rick left off there as well. So.
And then I just had down just a quick ARPA update. I know that many of you in this room have received the application for the countywide portion of funds. So I think it was sent to department heads and office holders. The deadline for that is February 9th. If you didn't get that and need it, I would reach out to either probably Chris or Dr. Foster here this morning. So that is due this week, February 9th. That's the portion of funds that we've set aside to help area municipalities, which would also include the county, to fund projects that may not happen otherwise. So for the municipalities, we'll be looking for projects maybe like a sewer project or something that they would not be able to do alone, but we could use some matching funds that they have to get that project off of the ground. But again, that also includes the county projects that may benefit county buildings or programs. So make sure you get those in here in the next couple of days.
That's a question about that. If we apply, do we have to run that for the commission first, or do we just submit our application?
You just submit it. Yep, you just submit it. And we're going to review those directly. The committee is not going to be involved in those. So once you submit that, we will start reviewing them. Any other questions on that topic? We've already touched quite a bit on ARPA, but obviously there's a lot of funds that the county's been entrusted in and that many of you all have been involved in to the tune of $57 million. We've made a lot of progress on that through the community, the CIP programs of about $20 million. We've dedicated about $8 million to small businesses, of which I think around $4 million have been distributed. Is that right, Jeff? I'm looking at you for, I think maybe more than that. Is it a little bit more than that? Okay. And then the non-for-profit round, we're probably going to make decisions on those later this week. We wanted to let everything come in from the committee so we could look at it as a whole picture and then make decisions on those. And I think we have that on the agenda for Thursday of this week. We're going to do one more round of both the non-for-profit and the small business sometime this year to use up as many of those funds as are available. And then, of course, the county-wide projects that we will be looking at here in the next couple of weeks. That's all I had as far as topics go.
One last thing
Anything
I
else?
would
Yeah.
throw in there is we have received applications for it. You guys remember Jenny was the assistant to Robert. We've got some applications in now, and we will probably, I hope we've got some good ones. We're going to look them over, maybe be able to hire somebody fairly soon in that department again to help with the PIO department. So if you guys have a need there, we get somebody brought up on board and up to speed, we'll have greater capacity to serve that need.
I think we left a few minutes for questions. So yeah, Cindy.
John, you might also mention that for ARPA on the county website, the transparency portal for ARPA will show all the employees in the public what we have spent thus far and the checks that were written. So people could go to the transparency portal and see that.
That's a great point, Cindy. And obviously the transparency portal is something that Cindy's office took the lead on early on. It's not just for the county funds. It's also for those ARPA funds that the county is responsible for distributing. And is that also in real time or close to real time?
Yes, it's
great.
every night, everything uploaded.
Okay,
Great.
it's a great point.
Does, in these ARPA grants that you're looking at right now, just county, do you have to tie that back to some impact from the pandemic?
No, not necessarily. Justin, give.
Well, I think in some way, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Some people make it quite a stretch, but eventually it does.
yeah, it doesn't have to mean that we've been totally impacted by a loss of revenue or something like that, we could send it to you, and I think it may be on the application. There's a slew of things that are considered acceptable. To me, some of those aren't really COVID related, but there's a slew of things that are considered acceptable. And assistance to county governments would be one that a lot of counties are utilizing. Honestly, we're one of the few counties in the state that have actually pushed the money out into the county, into business owners' hands and nonprofit hands first. Many of them have just taken the money, put it towards a bridge, and called it a day. So we're proud that we have prioritized taking care of the community first, and now we're looking at the needs of the county.
Out of the $57 million, there's 10 million of it that's earmarked as county use. And on that 10 million, we don't have to state a relationship to a loss from COVID because it's been established that that's a default level that the government, local governments have been impacted by COVID. So, but the rest of it, we either need to relate it to some sort of healthcare expenditure related to COVID or some sort of negative economic impact that's resulted from COVID. But out of the $10 million, we've already allocated about $5 million of that towards a CIP project that didn't really qualify under other categories, but was a necessary project to do. So we do have some room for things that don't quite meet the definition of COVID.
So it's a yes and no.
Well, from what we're hearing around the country, it's a little bit of the Wild West out there too. People have stretched the definition of how I was impacted by COVID to cover a lot of things that I don't think the intentions were to support those projects, but they're getting funded anyway. So not that we want to do that, but it makes us look all the better when we stick to the rules.
Just your opinion, but you think that all these funds, that back end, not very far away, is maybe putting up pressure on.
Well, yes, it has to some degree. There's a real long answer, and I'll try to be shorter about the construction pressures. Seventh generation home builder. I grew up in the business. I was president of the State Home Builders Association, local home builders association, national board of directors. So that's right in my wheelhouse for that question. When the lost decade of housing hit, factories that made plywood, that made cabinets, that made sheetrock were shuttered because there just was no demand. It got so bad because we had obviously we had overbuilt, but there was a crash that was so deep and so bad that all of those things shut down. Anybody in construction who was close to retirement took it. Anybody who was new in construction, 20 to 40 years old, said, I'm choosing a different career because I can't take care of my family like this, and I'll never go through this again. So when the construction industry began to bounce back, 2 minutes. It took a long time to get these industries back up to speed. We get it back up to speed and COVID hits and shuts everything down again. So we've had a double whammy, or the perfect storm, of closing some businesses that support construction and the labor that supports construction. It's just got back-to-back hits, and it's going to take a little bit to recover from that. So this is a long haul to bounce back on material costs. Lumber's back down. Lumber is one that can happen pretty quickly, but it's a long haul. It's a long climb to get out of this, particularly on the labor side.
Anyone else?
I will say this, as you're looking to hire folks, because we're headed into likely a recession. I know housing is because of interest rates. There's a lot of pressure in that construction market right now. Might be a great opportunity to pick up some folks that really are good at what they do, but are seeking something more stable with benefits. There's not a lot of benefits in the construction world. So if you know somebody in that area, maybe a really good opportunity to promote the jobs that we have in the county.
Have you all started to see a little bit of stability as far as your hiring and retention goes? No?
We're seeing a nod. Yes, we're here. So yeah, that's
A little bit
good.
of stability? Good. So it looks like a mix then. Well, sure appreciate your time this morning. If we can do anything,
reach out.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.